Welcome to Rhyme and Reason. I am your host, Wanda Reid, and I am here and with Kathy, and it is our desire that we are able to encourage, to inspire, and to meet you at your point of need. So, Kathy, because the listeners do not know you, do not know anything about you, I would like you to introduce yourself to the listeners and share a little bit about your background.
Well, my name is Kathi Amrich, and I retired from the school system after 33 years. I'm from Torrington, Connecticut. My husband was in the Air Force, and we ended up here in Kernersville. I've got 3 children. Well, they're big kids now. They're all married. So I'm retired with my husband here in Kernersville.
So, the subject for the day is weight. Weight, not WAIT, weight, such as the weight of life, how the weight of life on this Christian journey. To the listeners who don't know, the way I met Kathy, I remember meeting her. We were at the Y, and it's, of course, the Y is where you go and you work out, and we were in a class and that kind of thing, and it just felt like that we knew each other all our lives. It did not take a whole bunch of things for the conversation. It was just there. It was just automatic. So this is how I began to know Kathy, and then as the time went on and on, I learned even more about her personality, of who she is and what she believes. Okay, so that's my take on Kathi Amrich. Okay, so going back to our topic about the weight of life, the weight of life. When you hear the weight of life, what do you think?
When I think of the negative things that happened during more of my married life, moving around, having children, responsibilities, that kind of weight. As you get older too, parents having illness or passing away, and then that sadness of weight.
Think about weight. I think about all those kinds of things. I think about the burdens of life. I think about the challenges. I think about responsibilities of family and growing up, because as children, we don't have those type of responsibilities as much as we definitely have as we get older. So the weight of life can be challenging. Do you consider the weight of emotions?
And it's funny, like if it's pertaining to me, whether it be illness or job related, I could almost handle that weight. It's when it's the weight that I can't control, that I have to really learn how to give it to God, because I want to fix it. I want to fix that weight, whatever it may be, whether it be a job loss or an illness or a death in the family or a friend. That was a good feeling. The weight for me is when one of my children has something going on, or when my husband lost his job, or when my sister had pancreatic cancer, and then I had breast cancer, and it was like one thing after another. I felt like, dear Lord, you have to lift me, because I just can't walk by myself. And it reminded me of the Footprints poem, where there's 4 footprints and then there's only 2.
Yeah.
And I'm so glad he was there to hold me.
Absolutely. Absolutely. All of us have those kind of trying times, but I think it all boils down to what our relationship is with the God, and as to how we are able to go through it or to navigate through it. It has to do with our faith. So I'm going to ask you, how has your faith sustained you during the times of hardship, during the times of adversity?
I've always been a faithful person because my parents were that way, and we grew up in church and went to church all the time. So I've always been prayerful. I pray every day, morning, at night, and then I just chat with God during the day. I'm sure he rolls his eyes and goes, "Oh, it's Kathy again." I start my day at praying before I get out of bed, and I do a brief hello and ask him to guide me and my husband and watch over those that are sick, be with my senior friends from the Y. and I say some prayers that I learned as a Catholic, but then I do my own talking to Jesus. When they know you're a prayerful person, somebody will say, will you pray for me? Will you pray for my sister? And so prayer is just embedded in me. Sometimes when you're going through like even anxiety issues, it's invisible to everybody else. It's not like a broken leg where you can see a cast or your arm in a sling. It's internal, and not everybody can see that, but God does. So I lean on Him for that.
Absolutely. So leaning upon God and your relationship with God says so much about how you handle whatever it is you handle. I know you mentioned your family, but the one thing that I know that we do have in common has to do health-wise, has to do with breast cancer.
Mm-hmm.
For sure, for me, I grew up in church. I won't say that I was always faithful with the things that I should do, but I was a human, so I was doing some human things, some bad choices, and all of that. But at the end of the day, I've always had my relationship with God, even going through all of those individual types of things. For me, hearing news of cancer and all of that, I don't know how I would say that it impacts people differently because people handle grief differently. People handle death differently. And we handle personal shock, trauma, or whatever you want to say, bad news differently. What was your process like? What was
It
that?
was it was odd, Wanda, because when my sister had pancreatic cancer, and we were only a year apart, and I was devastated. She was in Connecticut, I was in North Carolina. And I remember going up there, and we were in the hospital, and we got the news, and I climbed in bed with her, and I went, oh, if I could just take half of your cancer away from you, if I can take half of it and you could like live longer. Well, then I came home, and it was like 6 months later, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. I think I was so consumed with her that I wasn't even thinking of my condition. In fact, my doctor even said that. He said, Kathi, I know what you're going through. You need to know that what you have is a serious thing, and you need to own it. And I really wasn't owning it at the beginning. One thing was different when my husband got cancer, when we both were getting ready to retire. And all of a sudden we found out he had bladder cancer. And I said to somebody, oh, isn't that wonderful that he's retired, he's home now, because he had lost his job. He was in Aiken, South Carolina, and I was here, he was there. And I went, we could be together for this. We could lean on each other. And somebody said, I can't believe you're saying you're thankful. And I said, God did this. If he was down there and had it, and I was up here, I would be a nervous wreck. Whereas he waited till we were retired, and we could be together, and we could lean on God and get through it. And we did.
God is awesome in all that He does. Sometimes He answers our prayers the way that we don't necessarily think. I think it was a lot of consolation for your sister, at that particular time. I think to just climb into bed with her and have a conversation with her and love her when you know that she's going through. I think the same thing applies to your relationship with marriage or anything else at that particular point in time. It is nice, it is awesome to have the type of support that you need when you are going through whatever that going through is. For me, my support system was great. I owned it once I knew about it. Mm-hmm. But honestly, I probably knew about it before I ever went to the doctor. It was just, thinking, God changes things for everybody, so I'm just going to believe that He's just going to change it for me. Mm-hmm. Now, I hadn't prayed about it, and not in that aspect, but I believed that He would change it for me. However, God knows when you really believe He's going to change it, or whether or not you're trying to psych yourself up to think that He'll believe that you're going to change. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
But at the point in time that I got the diagnosis, being stunned by it, I also heard God in that hour, in that moment, hearing that it is well. It is
Yeah.
well, and it is not unto death. So at that particular point, who am I going to believe? Am I going to believe what doctors or people and all of that have to say about that particular thing? Or am I going to believe the God that I serve? So that's what I own. I own the fact that my daddy had told me was going to happen, that it was not unto death, that it would be well. It did not mean that there would not be any residue.
Mhm.
There's definitely residue. But he is true to his word, you know.
Oh, yes. And my mother would always say, God willing. He has the final say, even though if you get bad news, he's got the final say. Support group that I had was at school. I have a good support group. It can be very depressing. And I had this amazing group of family friends, because my family was in Connecticut. But this group of people that I knew it was going to be okay.
I take so much solace in knowing that. I am so humbled because what you have to understand is things don't always have to be that way. So, whether it's the cancer or anything else, things really don't have to be this good. And that's actually what you were saying when you were talking about your husband and yourself getting diagnosed close to the same time and had been able to walk that thing together. It didn't have to be that good because there are people that face things alone and
Exactly.
they don't have the support that they need or would like to have.
Yeah.
And sometimes the failure to get that support may be because of the way that they have lived or treated people prior to. Then other times it just may not be that. But sometimes God just allows us to walk alone so that we're walking with Him and not leaning on everybody else because they're not.
And I think like you had talked one time about steps. And thank goodness I followed the steps that he had laid out for me, because if I had my way, I wouldn't have taken some of those steps.
So being tested and having and the weight of life. Okay, and I know you mentioned your sister, and it's even hard when you're close to people.
Oh, yeah.
They don't even have to be your blood relatives.
No. And then when 2 years ago we found out my daughter had a strange heart condition. She had to have open heart surgery at Duke, and it's just been one setback after another because it's still not fixed, and she's struggling with it, and she's my child, and I want to fix it, and I want her to be able to grow and see her little girl grow too. That ate at me. That ate at me more than anything else. My mom had passed away when she was 52 of a brain aneurysm, just like that, on Christmas Eve. So and I think I was 24, 25 years old. I had a little baby. And that was devastating to me because I never knew anyone that really passed away. So that's when I grew up and I knew life was not always going to be fun and games. And trials and tribulations are all through life, whether it be a job loss or a friend or having to pack up and move and many things. But when it's your child and it's something like that and you can't fix it, and it just ripped at me. And I tell you, I poured myself out to God. I poured myself out, and I gave it to him in the end. And so many times I have friends that say, now give it to him and just leave it alone. But he does want me to keep talking to him. So I do give it to him, but I also talk to him every day about it. Like, I know you're really busy, but don't forget my little girl and her medical team. But I do feel good that she's under God's watch. I have to feel like I have to know that. But it had sent me into the anxiety mode.
Well, now let's back up. So now we're in the anxiety mode.
That weight was heavy.
Yes, but
that was heavier. That was heavier than the breast cancer weight.
And that probably has a lot to do with every piece of you is a part of her. Okay, every piece of you is a part of her. And for you, you can handle the world, but you don't want your child to have to deal with the world. And that's what it boils down to. And it is a part of life. But just think about it. At one point, your regimen or your routine says, I get up in the morning, I pray, I kiss the cross, I do this, and I pray continuously, right? And is it more of a routine or a ritual, or are you believing what you're praying? Because if you're believing what you're praying, then you have to go back to what the word is saying about trusting in the Lord. You know what I'm saying? Trusting in the Lord with all your heart and leaning not to thine own understanding. So that would take me to the question for you. And I believe you've answered it, but I'm going to let you entertain it some more. And the question is, have there been moments when you question your purpose? And have you gotten clarity over what your purpose actually is?
No, I don't think I've ever questioned my purpose or the Lord. I never would question him. If somebody asked me one time, "Did you lose faith when some kind of a hardship, or like if my husband kept lost his job, or when he got sick and was coming home?" Oh, they said, "Wouldn't you just lose faith after so many hardships?" And I went, "That's when I grabbed my faith. That's when I leached onto it. I believed it, but I also, if I didn't count on it, I don't know what I would have done. I just probably would have just fallen apart."
Okay, when things are going on, we have a choice. We have a choice in how we receive it, what we do with it. You know, life is not a bed of roses for any of us, and I just don't believe that as individuals that we would lean and trust God if it was not for the things that happen in life and our experiences. And that's all a part of the process to strengthen us, to grow us, and to show us us. Because, we can look in the mirror and we can think one thing, but the mirror that we're looking at versus the mirror God sees shouldn't be totally different, but yet it is. Yeah. It is. But then it takes the experiences and the situations and the challenges of life.
Yes, and I never got angry at God. A lot of people say, "Did you get angry?" And I don't know. I just never felt like, "Oh, why would I do that? I need him. I don't want to be angry with him." I think I even went overboard. It was like, can I say an extra rosary? Can I, what more can I do? I mean, we go to church anyway every Sunday. Should I light more candles? Not angry because, so many times, why not me? Or why not? But you still, in that back part of your mind, the mother mode, the wife mode, whatever it is, kicks in. And that, to me, that's the hardest thing not to accept, because I'm still grabbing onto him, but to just stay in the present. Don't look back. Don't look forward. Just stay in the present, where he has you right now. And that's my thing to try and do.
Well, God will take care of all our needs. So there's nothing that comes as a surprise to him. Not the pancreatic cancer that your sister had. Not the cancer for your husband. Or the conditions of your daughter. Or the fact that one is moving back. Nothing. That's absolutely nothing to which he is unaware. He's aware of everything, that all the way down to the hair on our head. And that right there amazes me, that he would love us in a level like that. It's not anything that a finite mind can really wrap its mind around, the level of love that God has for his children. So he wants things to go well for us, but
that's why he says, when he says, "Cast all your cares on me, for I care about you."
Absolutely. And I do think that the emotions that we have are going to take place, but it's about whether or not we allow those emotions to overtake us and do not respect what that relationship is with God. And there are the relationship, kind of the superficial relationships that people have. The superficial relationships, how they say it separates you between the girls and the boys, or the women and the girls, like that. When you are facing life and hard situations, you get the opportunity to allow other people to see the God in you.
Mm-hmm.
and whether or not you will respond like God would have you to,
Mm-hmm.
or if you would respond to the person that's going through the way you would like somebody to understand, even if you were lashing out and momentarily, that they would understand, that they would not take it personal, you know, that you just needed a moment to release.
Mm-hmm.
That's who I serve. What about you?
I remember as a little child, we always used to get on our hands and knees. We'd pray at night at our bed. And it was funny because it was like years later, I remember saying to my sister, when did we stop kneeling down and going into bed and saying our prayers? And she said, I don't know. But you know, when I knelt down, when I found out she had pancreatic cancer, I got on my knees at my bed and I remember just wailing and praying. Be able to, I often say when people are going through a bad time, I go, ooh, if they don't believe in God or know Jesus or the Holy Spirit's in your heart, how do they get through something like that?
Looking at it in the natural, I would say you really don't get through it.
No. And that's why I love talking to you, like every time we're at the Y, because you always put something into perspective when I bring it to your attention.
Well, you know, let's talk about peace. And that doesn't deviate or move us very far from weights, because with the weight of life and the challenges and the burdens and the emotional things and just life, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, just
the weight, even though you love God, and even though you understand that things happen in life, life has has the opportunity to take your peace if you allow it.
that.
So how do you keep your peace?
By trying to be very positive. Tried a little bit of meditation. I've been doing some breathing because I knew I was breathing wrong, but now I know how to breathe right. And just spending time with my husband and thinking how lucky we are that we have each other and we're blessed to be able to retire together. I just don't want negativity to get in my head. So
how important is the community and the fellowship in your life when you're carrying, or for the weight of your life, but you shouldn't be carrying it, but how important is it to you?
I think it's important. The community as a whole, and Kernersville is such a small community, but it's beautiful. I think Kernersville is just that type of warm fuzzy that I needed to be in the final part of my life. I couldn't have picked a better place.
And you know what I was just going to say, because you keep mentioning Kernersville, but we have listeners and people that are watching the podcast that don't know where Kernersville is. But Kernersville is in North Carolina. It's a small community outside of Winston-Salem, in between Guilford County and Forsyth County, or Greensboro and Winston-Salem. It's not extremely large, but it continues to grow. So, and I know I'm veering back because this was another question that I really wanted to get a take on from you. And it was, have there been the moments that you have really struggled to understand why different things happened? Or were you just generally accepting?
You know, I don't think I ever asked why. And I think because there was always something else going on, and it was like, well, which one's worse than the other? I don't know. I just knew that, God had a plan and that was it. The hardest thing right now, and it's because it's still in the present, is my daughter's heart issues and it being non-curable, but them being able to monitor it, but they can't almost figure out why it's doing what it does. But it doesn't make me say why her. Said like, why me? I don't think I ever said that.
All have situations, and even when people are going through whatever their go through is, because truthfully, some things may not seem as weighty for one person as they are for somebody else.
Exactly.
But God is all knowing that whatever the weight is that we have to bear, or that is given to us in life with challenges. And what I mean by given to us is, I mean being allowed by God, since He's aware. But any of those things that we are built to endure it.
Yeah.
Different people are built to endure different things. So what I will say is that I've enjoyed this interview. with
Oh,
you. I've enjoyed having you. But before you go, I would like for you to speak to our listeners with what you would want them to know as the takeaway from our conversation in regard to the weight of life or peace. What would you have them to know? Like Kathy's last words.
my last words would be, because I'm still working on this myself, quit second guessing yourself. What you did, you already did. Don't look back and say, oh, well, I should have done this or I should have done that. Don't look so forward and think, oh my gosh, suppose this happens. You don't know what's going to happen. Just live in the present. Do what you can to make today a happy day, whether it be to help somebody else that might be going through something, or just help yourself. Look at the sunset. Look at the birds outside right now. But I would try and focus on today and leave the past, the future, that's in God's hand. And I really think that kind of helps you can't fix it all, but you can fix how you're reacting to things. So I'm choosing right now to try and react in a positive way and know that I can't fix everything, but through Christ our Lord, He will lift me and He will get me through each day.
Excellent. Excellent. And I say that because absolutely correct. There's one God who's in control of all. We don't get to control anything. I am always reminded, God continues to remind me, even as a child, that I control nothing. We want to control something, but I control nothing. It's all in His hands.
Thy will be done.
Mm-hmm. Yes, absolutely. So I would just like to thank the listeners for being with us today for this podcast. And as we talked about the weight of life and peace, and Kathi was sharing with us what her life looked like and how she found the will to just make it and move on and know what God is able in the midst of things. Where are you with the weight of life? Are you allowing the weight of life to weigh you down, or are you giving and casting your cares upon God in the midst of whatever your trials or challenges may be? Because if that is not the case, that's where you need to put your cares. If you don't know how, just begin with a conversation with Him, and He will meet you at your point of need.